Hey, I'm glad you guys are here. We're going to go ahead and get started. We will most likely have a few people join us in the next few minutes. So that will be awesome. I want to, first of all, make sure you guys have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, just something to jot down a couple of notes. I'm going to have you think about a few questions before we get too far into this. And if you guys want, you can absolutely turn off your cameras if you're concerned about that. You can totally turn off your cameras. I love having people to look at and talk to, but I know you're there, so that's good. Okay, so if you got a pen and a piece of paper, I'll tell you what to do with that in just a second. So this web class is for anyone who's looking to create more healthy connection through boundaries in their relationships. I recorded it last week, but had some issues with my camera actually. Got that all fixed and taken care of, so we're good to go for this week. I'll be covering the same content this week I did last week, but as I was kind of reorganizing it and re-looking at it, I recognized that this is really actually a relationship boundaries kind of class. A lot of this has to do with boundaries in relationships and how to keep ourselves safe and evaluate what safety in a relationship looks like, which is really important. I work with a lot of women who are in recovery for intimacy disorders. This is love addiction, pornography addiction, sex addiction, anything like that, relationship hopping, this kind of thing. And it's really important to them as we're working in recovery to learn to set healthy boundaries, romantically, sexually, financially. A lot of us don't really learn to set boundaries in childhood. We don't learn how to set boundaries as teenagers. We know that we want to have relationships and we know relationships are important, but we're often learning how to do relationships and have relationships from other people who don't necessarily know the most healthy ways to have those. So it's one of the reasons I started these web classes, is just to kind of get some of that information out there and share it with other people on a bigger platform than I do with my one-on-one clients in small groups. So we'll be talking about some boundary setting, evaluating safety in relationships, that kind of stuff. So if you're just now joining us, if you could grab a pen or pencil and a piece of paper, I'm going to have you guys think about two questions. Why are you here? So I know you might say, hey Shannon, so I know you might say, well, I'm here because you invited me, or I'm here because I wanted to learn more. Okay, those are good ideas. Wanting to learn more is good, but I'm sure there are a lot of potential hours you could spend of your time in places where you don't actually show up, where you don't actually log in. So what was it about this web class that had you go, okay, I'm going to go and spend an hour of my time, my most important commodity, in this class? What attracted you to it? What is going on in your life has made this seem like it might be something that you could use? So why are you here? And then the second question I want you to think about is, what about your loving relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship, a close friendship, a relationship with a parent or a sibling or a child, what is it about your relationships that you most would like to fix, that you most would like to be able to get into a healthier space? Okay, so I'm going to let you guys just finish wrapping that up while I go ahead and tell you how we're going to do this, how I'm going to do this webinar. So I've got some content that I've promised you, content you've probably showed up for. We're gonna go through that content, and then we're gonna do, I'm gonna review the content with you, tell you how to contact me if you have any questions, And then, well, actually, I'll tell you how to contact me with questions, and then we'll review really briefly. Sometimes we have people log on really last minute, then they'll get just a really brief overview of a few things, and then I will let you go. We will probably actually be done about 6:45, 6:50. So probably great for everyone. We love to have 10 extra minutes in our lives. So right now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and get started on this content. Now you have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil. So as I'm going through this, I want you to just write down keywords or ideas or thoughts you have that you would like to have answered. I want to be able to answer those questions for you, and I'm going to tell you how to email those to me and get those questions answered. I don't do Q&As on calls like this because it's so easy for me to get off topic, and I just love to chat with people, and I get all excited about chatting with people and helping people that I don't get the content covered. So it's kind of like my way of telling myself, no, you're going to do what you said you'd do, and you're going to show up, and we're going to stay with the program. And so that's just how we're going to do it. I do want to take your questions though. So absolutely jot those down, and then you can email me, and then I can give you like a really personalized answer as well. We don't have to worry about, confidentiality or anything. Okay. So what we have on our docket today, let's just start with being honest without causing harm. And I'm starting with this one because this is one that I really needed to learn. So quite a few years ago, probably about 10, all of my kids were in elementary school. And I wanted to be an involved mom, so I joined the PTA. And I'm there as a member of the PTA. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with the other moms. I enjoyed being so involved in my kids' school. It was awesome. And there came a point where they needed a new PTA president for the next year. And I was in no way looking to be PTA president. I was too busy raising my kids. My life was fine. I'll just show up and do whatever people need me to do. Well, I ended up being not only nominated, but elected PTA president for the next year. And that kind of like sideswiped to me. I didn't see that coming, but I had been the legislative vice president, been attending legislative sessions, had tons of fun with that because politics is fascinating to me. But so here I am, I've been elected PTA president. And just a few things happened. I'm still not even 100% sure what happened, but I talked to the outgoing president and said, hey, I'm not really sure I can handle this. I've got kids on the autism spectrum. I've got a lot going on. So she actually brought someone else in and put her in the position of PTA president. And I was like, well, ow, right? And the way I handled it was definitely not my most refined, it was a good refining moment. It's not how I want to go down in history. We'll put it that way. And at the end of the conversation, this dear friend of mine, we'd had this conversation. We'd gotten really clear. We'd both been honest. And she said, in the future, when you need to discuss things like this, I want you to remember that it's good that you want to be honest, and it's good that you're open with people, but there's something called tact that I think you could benefit from. I was like, how mean? I couldn't believe she said that to me. There's something called tact. And I was so hurt. My feelings were so hurt. And then I went, wait, could that be true? And I started to realize that my honesty, my willingness to be who I am, my willingness to speak what I feel and share what I feel is a gift. And I really needed to learn tact. So that's why I want to start here, is because this is where we need to learn tact. It is 100% okay and appropriate to share with someone how we've been impacted in a relationship. It's not okay to beat up other grown-ups or children for that matter, emotionally, physically, or in any other way. So learning to communicate honestly from a place of love and a place of connection, seeing the other person as a whole human being with feelings, with beliefs, with worries, with concerns, with upsets and traumas is really empowering, not only for us, but for them. And for those of us who want to have healthy, happy relationships, where we can have open dialogue and where we can really share with each other our open hearts. It's really important to learn what my one friend once called tact, what I now call honesty with compassion. So, you know, I say to my husband, hey, does this dress make me look fat? That old cliche. And it's, first of all, it's just not a nice question to ask your poor husband, right? But so I ask him, how does this dress make me look? And he really doesn't think it makes me look well. Now he can say, actually, you look like a cat. Okay, not nice, right? Or he could come at it from a place of, it's not the best dress I've seen you wear. Do you want me to help you pick out something else? Do you see the difference? And I might go, no, I really like this one, and still get my feelings hurt. The point is the nuance and the motive behind what we're sharing. Now, if I'm sharing something with someone just so that they understand what I mean, and they know I'm serious, and they know how they upset me and how they hurt my feelings, and dang it, they are going to get this, and I'm going to make sure. That is not a motive that is going to lead to compassion and love in a relationship. It's going to lead to hurt feelings. It's that whole, you know, where'd the tact go, Lacy, right? And the way to have this relationship without causing that harm is to first get on level playing fields. Okay, I'm a whole person, they're a whole person, we both have needs. How can I see us as equals? How can I see us both as children of God, or children of the universe, or children of source, or children of nature? How can I do that while also being true to my wants and needs? And it's important that we recognize the other person most likely has wants and needs as well, and that we honor that. Say, okay, I need to talk to you. Can you help me to understand what happened in this situation, what you were thinking and feeling, and then opening our hearts up to being willing to witness that. We don't have to agree. We can validate someone all day long. Oh, that must be hard. I'm so sorry you've gone through that. I know what it's like to feel so abandoned. I really care about you. We can validate all day long without ever agreeing with someone. Validation does not mean agreeing. Letting them feel heard does not mean we agree or that they are right. There are very often people in our lives who believe things about us that are not true, or certainly from our perspective, they're not true because, well, that's not how we meant it, right? Well, that's not what I meant to say. That's not what I wanted you to feel. But how did it come out? And being able to experience with them what they experienced and look at that from another perspective and say, could it have truly come across that way? And how could I have shared that bit of information or that request in a way that was more compassionate and was less derogatory or less demanding in the relationship? And doing so from a place of, this doesn't mean I'm a horrible person. This doesn't mean they're a horrible person. This just means we're two people and we messed up and we want to have more honesty. And in order to have more honesty, sometimes it takes me opening that door, me extending the olive branch, if you will. Even if I feel I'm the one who's been hurt, being able to hear from them first will open them up, hopefully, to hearing our honest interpretation of the events. And always realizing my honest interpretation versus their honest interpretation does not always mean that the whole truth is even there. There's always one more side to the story than there are people involved in the event. There are 5 people involved in the event. There are 5 experiences and 5 stories plus one, and that one is the actual non-judgmental, non-emotional truth of what happened. It's just the facts. She said this, he said this, I did this. And that is a space that we're trying to get to with honesty, because that's where we can find the truth of the changes that could happen in the relationship. So I hope that helps there in dealing with honesty without causing harm, and realizing that pain and harm are 2 different things. We inevitably will feel pain in some of our relationships. If it hurts, it's probably because something mattered. I never feel hurt when a perfect stranger on the street says something that doesn't have any meaning to me walking by. You know, he says, your shoe's untied. That's not going to hurt my feelings. Oh, my shoe's untied. I tie my shoe. I look down and I'm like, I don't have shoelaces. He must not be talking to me. Not a big deal. There's nothing in that situation that was emotionally charged. There's nothing that meant something to me. Now, if he looks like someone who was a past abuser, or he looks like an ex-boyfriend I still haven't got over, or something like that, totally different story. But pain just comes up with these things. Harm is more permanent, it's a lot more intense, and there's a lot more suffering involved. Suffering is always optional, but pain is just part of life, and learning to navigate that in our relationships and realizing that the pain in relationships can actually be a catalyst to help us to heal past hurts and harms, and to help us come closer together as two human beings who want to connect and who want to relate and who want to be in a loving, healthy dynamic. So I hope that that helps there. And that brings us to distinguishing between safe and unsafe relationships when it comes to having these kinds of conversations, or just really any situation. Now, we know if someone is constantly punching us in the face, it's not a physically safe relationship. We know that if a child is being verbally, sexually, or physically abused by another adult, it's not a safe relationship. What's hard are those we grow up and we're in these dynamics with peers and with equals and even with superiors at work or what have you. It can be really challenging to know what is and is not okay. And a lot of that has to do with our own personal boundaries. For me, flirting with male colleagues is not okay. If a male colleague starts to flirt with me, something has to change in that relationship. Whereas other people might be like, well, flirting's not a thing. It doesn't matter, right? So knowing for me that if I have a male colleague who is consistently flirting with me, that for me, that is an unsafe relationship because of my history, because of my traumas, because of what I'm working on in my life to be a woman living in recovery, in greater integrity, who's wanting to lead other women and change the whole culture around integrity and recovery. That's not something that I can allow. Now, that might not be a big deal. I mean, if guys aren't even an issue for you, then it's not a big deal. Now, I have female friends that we say things to each other that would absolutely be considered flirting, but I'm not attracted to women, so it's a different dynamic. My husband and I have one relationship. He is the only man I flirt with because I am romantically and sexually attracted to men. And I will not play with that energy outside of my marriage. Now, my closest friends and I, we flirt all the time. It's not a big deal. And some of them are attracted to women, but they have different boundaries. They have different needs. They have different protections they need in their relationships. Now, would I flirt with my female friend who is gay when she's just coming out of a really hard breakup and she's really vulnerable? No, because that would make it unsafe. That could make it challenging for her. That could make it just intense for her, just remembering and being triggered by that breakup or whatever's going on. So in being in a safe relationship, it's important to realize that our boundaries can be flexible. If they're rigid, they will snap. They will break. We will find ourselves so much more frequently breaking our own boundaries and the boundaries of other people. What's important to learn to do is let there be an ebb and flow in relationships, an ebb and flow in boundaries. Now, that's not to say there's ever going to be an ebb and flow in whether or not certain behaviors are allowed. I would never allow someone to punch me in the face and continue to hang out around me for very, very often. And if we did hang out, it would be in a very controlled public environment where there's very little, oh, I can't even think of the word right now, potential for stress or confrontation. So the boundary might be, I'm never going to hang out with people who punch me. But then what if one of them is my son and he's having a serious emotional breakdown and he needs me? Okay, now we're going to have interactions in a different space. So I have this boundary. People are not allowed to punch me. And then I have this space where I say, I stay 5 to 8 feet back. I keep aware of the situation. There's another adult there at all times. This kind of thing. So I hope you can see how those boundaries can be flexible in what is and is not allowed in our relationships. Now, should that child continue to punch or hit or be physically violent, there's definitely something else going on that needs to be handled. And then it might become when my son is physically violent, I will get him the mental health care that he needs. Okay, so I hope that makes sense with how boundaries can be flexible. And it's our job to keep ourselves safe. And it's our job to navigate those boundaries about what we will do in any situation. And that if we feel unsafe in a situation, checking in with a friend, checking in with someone else who can help us to see what we may not be able to see can be really beneficial. And this brings me to the next point of deciding if we should stay in a relationship, if that's what's best, or if it's best to break off the relationship. And this can go either way. It depends on the relationship. Sometimes things can be handled. If you've got two humble adults who are willing to acknowledge their wrongs in their relationship, who are willing to do their part in recovering the damage of their relationship, who are willing to say, I'm sorry, who are willing to make changes. It's a very different situation than when you've got a narcissist and a borderline in the same relationship, where one's constantly catastrophizing and making the other one either a demon or a savior, and the other person always thinks they're the savior and everything is about them. It can be, so they're very, very different dynamics there. So it's about what kinds of people are in the relationships. And with every interaction we have, I have clients who say, well, I don't want to try to have this honest conversation because if I have this honest conversation and he screams at me again, well, then I'm going to get hurt again. Okay, it's true. And we need to go in with boundaries, and we need to go in protecting ourselves from harm. And every interaction, even if it's an interaction of, I want to see if we can fix this relationship, I want to tell you how I've been impacted and give you the opportunity to show up in love and connection and humility. I'm showing up in love and connection and humility. Let's try to fix this. Even if it goes south, it's more information. And that information can tell us, okay, I need stronger, stricter, more firm, more solid boundaries. If you come in here screaming, I am going to just need to turn around and leave. I'm not going to engage that at all. Okay, so that will help us to have more information. Okay, what boundaries do I need to set to keep me safe in this relationship? And that boundary might even be, I will not engage this relationship until this person gets help. All right. So now I want to talk for a second about, I didn't bring my clock in here. Let me just look at the clock. Okay, we are doing awesome on time. Okay, so I want to talk for a minute about taking care of ourselves, because boundaries are one of the most important ways we take care of ourselves in our relationships and our day-to-day life. It's important that we have time to take care of ourselves, that we take that time emotionally, physically, spiritually, to do what we need to do to keep ourselves functioning as well as possible. And sometimes that means medication. Sometimes that means a therapist. Sometimes that means a life coach. Sometimes that means a 12-step or other recovery program. It can mean any myriad of things, but learning to tap into what we need can be so beneficial. And a few of the ways I like to tap into what I need, and if you guys have ideas and want to throw them down in the chat, that would be great. I won't be looking at them quite yet, but if you want to throw some ideas down in the chat on how you take care of yourself, that would be fantastic. So a couple of things I like to do. I love running. I know for some people that makes me a total crazy person, but I love running. There's nothing that feels so good as a really good, solid 5-mile run. And that just really helps me clear my mind. And sometimes I need complete silence. Sometimes I want an inspirational talk, or, throw in some TEDx or a cool podcast. And sometimes I really need to rock out to my 80s music. But finding things that can help you to detox without numbing is really beneficial. Tapping into, okay, does this help me feel calmer and more connected and more available to handle what's going on? Or does it make me feel more numb and agitated and exhausted afterwards? So that's really important. Now, meditation for me is really hard. I know some people they can just get into meditation really easily and it goes really well for them and they can clear their minds and it's awesome. And they come out of it feeling like they took a 2-hour nap. That is not reality for me. But I do find mindfulness to be very meditative and very centering for me. Just being really mindful about what I'm eating, what I'm making to eat, what path I'm taking as I'm driving to the grocery store or to pick up my kids from school, or what I'm doing right now as I'm sitting in this space, in my chair on this call, you know, feeling pretty good, feeling grateful, that kind of thing. Just tapping into what am I feeling internally, but also what am I feeling in my body. And as I bring that awareness to myself, realizing, wow, I'm kind of like going like this. So, you know, relax your shoulders, kind of let yourself breathe into the space you're in and be mindful about what's going on inside your body, what's going on inside your mind. Are you breathing? When things get really intense, I don't know about anybody else, but I stop breathing. And I just all of a sudden go, wow, I'm not breathing. And I have to take a few deep breaths. Really common when dealing with intensity or stress or trauma to have that kind of thing happen. So being aware of that and then taking the breaths, the calming breaths that we need, taking a walk, taking a run, doing some mindfulness, making sure we've eaten well, that kind of thing. And doing this, taking care of ourselves, will prevent burnout as we're trying to deal with and navigate challenging relationships. And the reason this is so important in recovery for women and men who have been in recovery, they know that it can be really, really challenging to stay calm. As you take away the drug, you take away what they have been using to numb, to calm, to self-soothe, to assuage that pain and fear and guilt and regret. As that's removed, there's a whole lot of rawness going on. And that makes it really, really challenging to be a reasonable human being for a while. So going through the self-care can kind of calm that, almost like a balm or an ointment. It can really calm that rawness so that burnout doesn't happen, feelings of overwhelm aren't as intense, the frustration, the giving up in recovery. I almost feel like the overwhelm of the new emotions coming up is probably one of our biggest challenges in recovery, at least with the women I work with in my coaching, because we develop these unhealthy coping mechanisms of unhealthy relationships, of letting people abuse us, or of being abusive ourselves, or of not addressing the core issues in the relationship, or not wanting to talk about it when other people bring them up. These are all unhealthy coping mechanisms that we learn. I mean, they're so common in our world. There's probably not anybody who doesn't have at least one or two of some of these. And many of us have fistfuls. So in learning to navigate life without these things, again, there's that rawness and that pain, and helping ourselves to calm, helping ourselves to let go of that overwhelm by making sure we're eating right, we're exercising, we're drinking enough liquids, that kind of thing, will really help to calm that. So taking care of ourselves, way important. And in taking care of ourselves, we also help to safeguard against further acting out or acting in behavior. So for the women I work with, that means we're having less one-night stands. That means there's less flirting with coworkers. That means there's less fantasy and distracting with dramatic fantasy relationships in the mind, or creating drama in the workplace or at school or whatever. And it stops us from needing so much to turn to these emotional affairs, or whatever they are, whatever it is the client or you or your loved one are dealing with, by taking care of the self-care and taking care of the rawness and the pain of not having those numbing behaviors anymore. It helps us to prevent the continued acting out behaviors, because we start to get to the core issues. Okay, yeah, it hurts and I feel angry, but why do I feel angry? Because that guy just told me that my shoelace is untied. Why did that set me off? Why am I so angry about that? You know? So kind of getting to the bottom of that. Which brings me to the final point. There's actually, so let's talk about the final point, which that I want to cover. If you've never heard the word forgiveness, no, I know everybody's heard the word forgiveness. We hear that so often. And if you are religious at all, especially in a Christian-based faith, forgiveness has been probably a part of your life from early on. We talk about forgiveness. We talk about honesty. We talk about, you know, we have this common language. Well, forgiveness is really helpful if we can do it right. The trouble is we often get confused with forgetting, you know, so there's the whole forgive and forget. And anyone who's been through trauma or pain or an intense breakup knows that forgetting is almost impossible. When I talk to my clients and when I teach them, and what I wanted to share with you tonight is that there is something so much more powerful and helpful than forgiveness. Because forgiveness, as we think about it in this world and culturally, at least in the United States, doesn't really help. What we need is something called forgoing. And forgoing says to my heart, to the other person's heart, we are both messed up human beings. We're both trying to do our best down here. And we both keep screwing up. And I mess up. I say things without tact. I sign up for things that I don't really have the energy to do. And then I can't show up. Other people get let down. And I can see that part of that is weaknesses that I need to work on, and part of that is just skills I don't have yet. And very often when pain is caused in a relationship, there's a lack of skill. There's a lack of knowledge, a lack of how to do something better. And if as human beings, as we recognize that other people are in the same place we're at, they're lacking skills. They're lacking the language to communicate what they're trying to communicate. They're lacking the knowledge or the wisdom on how to handle something. We're able to forego that pain and let go of the expectation that they should show up in a certain way. Because true, people should show up and be nice. They should show up and be respectful, right? And at the same time, very often they don't, or it doesn't feel like they do. So if we can forego that expectation that we must be treated in a certain way at all times, or things are not okay with the world and someone needs to pay, it will help us to be able to see other human beings as flawed, in pain individuals, just as we are. And the best part about that is as we start to see other people as flawed human beings in pain, in trauma, we've all been through it. We've all been through so much. This world is just, it's not really a safe place for anyone. No child gets out of childhood without some sort of scar or harm. We can have really good childhoods, and there's still always some sort of baggage or something to deal with. So in learning to navigate that, and in learning to see other people as flawed human beings who probably are, for the most part, doing the best they know how, and they're just trying to get love, and yeah, they're probably doing it in really maladaptive ways, in ways that are very painful to us, that affect us, might even change our lives, might even change the course of our lives. There might be permanent physical harm. Really big things can happen. Seeing them as human beings who are just trying to get their needs met, just as we are trying to get ours met, hopefully not in such destructive ways, will help us to forgive ourselves as well. You know, I don't know that everybody on here is religious, but there's that whole, you know, forgive or love, I'm sorry, thinking of the wrong one. Love your neighbor as yourself kind of thing. It's not so much just a Christian thing. You know, we have the golden rule and stuff, but loving others as you love yourself. As we come to forego this expectation of perfection in other people, this expectation of always showing up responsibly, humbly, maturely, if we can go, okay, other people aren't capable of that. And you know what? Neither am I. I have low blood sugar sometimes. Sometimes you don't get enough sleep. Sometimes you eat something that doesn't agree with you and then you're cranky. Things happen in this life that help us, encourage us to not show up as our best selves. And as we recognize that in ourselves and others, it becomes this amazing cycle where we're able to have more love and compassion and forgiveness, if you will, for others and ourselves. And that's that's one of the big messages I really want to get out into the world, is that there is so much more than forgiveness available for us, and that just forgiveness by itself is not going to do the healing we need. We must also come to see ourselves in relationship to other people as us, as flawed and sometimes immature and sometimes irrational, and them as flawed and sometimes immature and sometimes irrational. And how can we be safe? How can we set boundaries that communicate love and care and compassion while also keeping us safe and keeping our children safe and those in our stewardship safe? So that actually covers the content that I had tonight that I want to cover. So now what I want to do is let you guys know how you can get a hold of me if you would like to. If you have questions or anything that's come up for you, I want you to be able to reach out to me. So it's actually not that hard. I'm going to hold this up my very professional. You're just going to email me, Lacy, Lacy, at herrecoveryroadmap.com. I see Cassie down there smiling. You love this, huh? Lacy at herrecoveryroadmap.com. Now, I don't have very good finger dexterity, so my handwriting is not awesome, but do you know what? This is reality. This is the real me. So if you feel like you have a question or a concern, or hey, can you tell me more about that? Or hey, this came up for me. Do you have any thoughts? Please reach out to me. I get emails from people all the time. Oh, I don't want to burden you. I don't want to take your time. You guys, this is what I do all day, and I do it on purpose. I love this. I love sharing what I've learned growing up in the way less than ideal childhood through a way less than ideal first 41 years of my life, and the next 41 years will probably be less than ideal. But there's so much we can do to make it happier, to make it better, to make it more enjoyable. And I just want to share what I've learned. Okay, let me make sure. Okay, so we've talked about how to have some good boundaries. We've talked about how to, that even if you try to have a conversation and it doesn't go as well as you would like, how that's actually more information that can help you make important decisions. We've talked about how important it is to take care of yourself, to make sure you're at your best. Make sure you're going to the doctor for checkups. Make sure your health is okay so that you can be there for others, and so that you can learn, you can be in a space of recovery for yourself, because all of us are trying to recover from something. All of us have some hurt or something we're trying to recover from, and that's totally okay. And so how are you taking care of yourself in a way that facilitates you becoming a better and better version of you? And then we've talked about how important it is to forego those expectations of perfection in ourselves and others, because that helps us to love more deeply and to forgive and to let go, which is sometimes it feels like letting go means it doesn't matter. It's actually quite the opposite. Letting go means we matter enough to not let what happened destroy us. So I would love to hear from you guys. I would love to connect with you. Send me an email if you'd like. You've got my email address, actually. That's what all of the emails have been coming from. So feel free to reach out. The invitation is open. That is actually it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop recording.